Hey guys, hopefully everyone can hear me. I'm gonna probably start the stream in maybe 30 seconds, just see if we got anyone that just wants to drag along. Alright, I'll start, and then obviously if people want to join, they can join. That's totally fine. So yeah, welcome to my stream, guys. Hope everyone's having a really nice Friday. Um, so yeah, I mean I've been particularly quiet this week because, to be honest, there hasn't really been too much going on. I wasn't able to stream last week. It was pretty hectic. Was buying a new car, blah blah blah. But luckily, we haven't really seen anything hugely substantial. The only thing I would say is that maybe in the past few hours, like today, maybe you could say just at the end of last night, we started seeing this pullback from Bitcoin occurring. That was it was kind of expected. You know, we basically reached this target that I was kind of eyeing up for a little while. So, I mean, to be honest, we reached my initial target quite a while ago. I think it was around this region here. Um, but yeah, I mean, if we so what I've done here with this fib level is I've taken the low here to the high to the low that we had at around 74,500. And yeah, we're obviously rejecting off of the golden pocket 618 area, which is expected, right? I mean, it's pretty much expected. You know, the 618 is obviously an important area on a lot of Fibonacci, time frames. 618 is kind of what you're looking for a lot of the time. So it kind of makes sense that we have seen some kind of reaction. Now, for this entire move, which I am kind of seeing it as like some kind of possible A, B, C structure, although so I'm seeing something like that. Sorry, that was a little that overshot a little bit, but it's basically something like this is pretty much how I'm gonna see it. So you've basically got your A wave up, B wave down, and C wave up, and your C wave is going to consist of also possibly an ABC structure. Okay, so I am assuming that this was the A wave up of this final fifth wave into our target region of Bitcoin. And we are possibly in the B wave, possibly. Now, we we will probably get a bit more confirmation if we start breaking below 100K. So if we start breaking, not even 100K, I would say if we start breaking below this previous swing low here at around 101K, 100,700, then I would say that we are most likely in this B wave pullback. And yeah, I've made it pretty clear where I think the price for Bitcoin is going to land. So what I would like to see is obviously Bitcoin reverse within this area here. And obviously I've got areas where I would not like to see Bitcoin fall below. So yeah, I mean, this is pretty much what we're looking at, right? We're basically looking at, we can see that we have this 4 hour candle, oh sorry, this daily candle here is an engulfing candle. We can see this is obviously indicating some kind of trend reversal. We had this channel that I was tracking, or this rising wedge. And we've got like 3 touch points. Got one, almost 2, 3, 4, and we've kind of broken out of this. So there is a chance that Bitcoin could maybe recover a little bit, and then we go back down, or we just continue to go lower, and then have a little bit of a bounce, and then continue to go lower. As long as we do not break below this $81,000, $82,500 level, then I think we can see continued upside continuation for Bitcoin. Um, if we start losing these levels, to be honest, if we start even losing this level here, so if we start even losing the 618 level here, then I think Bitcoin could potentially be in trouble. I don't see us losing that level. I do think we should be buying at this level here if it comes down to this level, which, you know, I don't know if it will, but I mean, to be honest, anything below 93.5K, then yeah, I mean, definitely it's a buy signal. But remember, your invalidation is basically below this area here. This is your invalidation, in my opinion, 82,400. If we sustain below that level, then I think there is a very good chance that Bitcoin will be retesting this buy zone here that I've had highlighted for many months now. You know, the final target, and I've said this for a while, my final target for Bitcoin is going to be between 130K to maybe 140, 150K tops. I think we could possibly stretch a little bit higher. We could stretch maybe around to the 150K mark, but I don't see us going higher than that. We would have to have super, super bullish news. Um, you know, people are saying, oh, Bitcoin can go to 1 million. Yeah, no, not this cycle. Sorry. I don't think it's going to happen. Um, I think if you really wanted to be massively optimistic on where Bitcoin can go, yeah, sure, you could maybe say it might get near the 200% fib extension at like almost 200K. But that's pretty unlikely, to be honest. I'd love to see that. I just don't think it's a likely scenario. So, yeah, I mean, you can see Bitcoin for quite some time has kind of been playing around in this range previously that we're in. So we were previously in this range bouncing between that 88.5K level to this, 109, 110K level. Then obviously we fell through and we are back within this range where we basically filled that fair value gap here. We filled it borderline almost perfectly. And then obviously retested this previous support here, and then obviously came back into this range, retested the highs of the range, had a slight deviation above it, and now obviously we've got this like breakout of the rising wedge, and we're obviously going to the downside. So there's nothing like surprising at the moment that Bitcoin's doing. This is why I've been pretty adamant about keeping my short open between this 109 to 111K region. My average is like, because that last DCA didn't hit, my average is like 107,500 or something like that. So it's not terrible, but it would have been nice if that DCA hit, but it's fine. Like, if we even go back up there and tap it and come back down, that'd be really nice, but it honestly doesn't even matter that much because, in this scenario, we either go up to retest again and fail, or we just continue to grind lower and we get into this region here. Obviously, what that means for altcoins, so if we just like pick any altcoin, you can see obviously we're bleeding quite bad. I did have this short idea, but yeah, it got faded by like nothing, to be honest. I think it was like stupid percent. Like, I don't even know. It was like not even 1%. It was something pretty crazy. And then I was like, whatever. I'm not gonna chase. But that would have been a really nice short idea. I'll take that off now because obviously no point. But I was kind of half hoping that Link would retest this trend line down here. But you can see obviously due to what Bitcoin is doing, and obviously the market sentiment at the moment, we are obviously retesting previous areas of support. We're also testing very important Fibonacci levels. So for instance, in this case with Link, I've just taken a very basic fib from this low to this high. You can see that we're kind of just trying to hold pretty much exactly the 50% fib level, right? That's pretty much what we're sitting at the moment. Again, I wouldn't like to see Link break below like $13.1. That's kind of the golden pocket region. Obviously, if Bitcoin continues to go down, then it will obviously drag Link down with it. And, we could maybe even get to 78.6, but I think that would be kind of like last resort. We don't want to, we don't even want to think about breaking this level. We want to basically hold this level. So yeah, I don't think we're gonna see $10 again, even though it would be nice, because then, we could all stack up on it. But to be honest, like from quite a while ago, I've been saying to people that they should be buying Link at around $10 anyway. So hopefully people are kind of just sitting on that if they're in spot positions at the moment. Yeah, anyway, so back to what I was saying. So Bitcoin, obviously, if it continues to go down, it will bring the market down. Ethereum has obviously done quite well in terms of what we've seen recently. We saw this really nice pump from 1700 all the way up to almost 2700. So I mean that was a pretty big move, to be honest. From Ethereum, it was nice to kind of see it do something. Yeah, we basically had a 57% gain on that, which was really, really nice. So you can see obviously it retested that much larger time frame trend line that you see here that has been around since June 2022. So we've obviously had some testing of this here. Yeah, I initially did it like this, and I'm trying to remember why. It might have been, yeah, it might have been on the daily actually. That's fine. There's a couple of slight variations of how you can draw that trend line, but for now, let's probably not get too caught up in it. Main point is Ethereum has retested the 50% fib level from the previous high to the previous low. So it has retested 50% fib level. Now remember, 50% fib level and also even the golden pocket level are very, very important levels, very important Fibonacci levels. You will obviously see some resistance when price obviously meets this level. And you can obviously see that here. We've met the 50%. We have obviously tested, pushed through it, but then obviously got rejected again. So this is the third rejection from the 50% fib level. Now, sometimes people say, oh yeah, the more you test the level, the more likely it will be that it breaks. Yes, that is true. But, the problem here is that what we're seeing on the daily RSI is bearish divergence, right? We're seeing bearish divergence. So as prices obviously continuing to try and push higher, you can see the RSI is obviously getting a lot less. And that simply just tells you that obviously, buyers are slowing down, even though, the price is going up, there isn't really the volume that's pushing the price up. So this is something that you need to really be aware of. I do think that we're going to get a pullback in June in the next couple of weeks. I do think that it would be healthy for Ethereum to definitely retest this level here. $2,000 region, maybe even the $19,000 region. It would be quite deep for it to come as low as 17,000, but I wouldn't be hugely surprised. But again, you don't really want to be losing that 786 fib level. Like you really don't want to be losing that level. Okay, so ideally where you would want to get to is 50% fib level. 50% fib level is quite a nice target. That will bring you to basically around $2,085. So, you know, we'll definitely try taking along at this point. It's obviously too early right now. You know, Ethereum is correcting, everything is correcting. We might still push higher, although I don't see that happening at the moment. I don't think it's high probability. But we need to obviously monitor the market and see what's gonna unfold. Um, so yeah, on the plus side, and there obviously is a plus to this, you know, Ethereum has been in a decline since middle of December 2024, right? And we managed to push through this trend line, um, you know, pretty impulsively, okay? So it was a pretty impulsive breakthrough. So I don't expect Ethereum to just kind of go back to make equal lows. Okay, I don't expect Ethereum to do that. What I do possibly expect is, as I said, we may retest that 50% fib level. Obviously, the 382 is important, but I do see this as a more likely scenario to play out, basically. Um, Now, obviously, USDT dominance was looking dangerous in terms of might be time for it to reverse. Um, so yeah, I mean, I kind of took a fib that pretty much was basically, you know, I mean, it's probably not the most accurate, but on the lower time frame, I was more kind of looking at this previous high, previous low. We obviously retraced a little bit. I suspect this was probably just a not a massively deep retracement, to be honest. Still counts as one, just not very deep. Probably the 286. Uh, sorry, not 286, 236. Yeah, I mean, so it only really came up to the 236. I don't even think it even hit the 382. So it was relatively weak. It was relatively weak bounce at this point. And then obviously we went down further, hovered around that 0.618, so golden pocket fib level. And then obviously came down and we touched that 1.382. 1.382 level is obviously quite an important Fibonacci level. It's normally where I would say that we would want to see um, this kind of we can call it a third wave. Again, this is a little bit weak to be a wave two, but let's just accept it for now. We obviously have made that third wave drop down to basically around 1.382, which is an ideal target for a third wave. Now, obviously, it is expected that we see a reaction at this point. At the moment, we only see on the lower time frame a three-wave move up at the moment. Okay. What would be worrying is if obviously we have a five-wave move up. Okay. That would be worrying because then that would kind of signal more that we have some kind of trend reversal. What might happen, and I'm not saying it will, but what might happen is we could have some possible inverse head and shoulders playing out. So this is your left shoulder, your head, right shoulder, and then continue. I don't see that happening though. Like I don't see it happening at the moment. I'm not confident that that will happen. If we take, I mean, yeah, to be honest, if we take a trend line, you can see it's pretty obvious that, you know, USDT was going to push higher in the past like day or so. It looks like it's kind of not hanging around here anymore, and we are looking to possibly push higher. So, yeah, I mean, you can see that this was obviously previous support for USDT dominance. It broke support, and now obviously we've broken above this trend line. We may retest support turn resistance for USDT dominance. So obviously, if that happens, then, you know, obviously everything's gonna just go balls up, right? You're gonna see price drop pretty rapidly for Bitcoin. Um, Alts will obviously suffer considerably as well. But yeah, we obviously have to keep an eye on everything. So Bitcoin, USDT dominance, even Bitcoin dominance as well, we need to keep an eye on. So yeah, and obviously if we look at Bitcoin dominance at the moment, we obviously had that really nice pullback, which, you know, was a possible opportunity to go long on alts. Um, but you know, now I mean, we're still climbing higher, right? We're still making higher highs and higher lows on dominance. That hasn't changed. You know, yeah, so just higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows. You know, we haven't stopped. We haven't stopped. So I think fundamentally it's all about Bitcoin still at the moment. At the moment, it's still about Bitcoin. We're still obviously pushing higher. But now, obviously, we're reaching a point on Bitcoin where we've reached a target and we're getting a pullback. That doesn't mean Bitcoin dominance is going to go down, because if Bitcoin starts rapidly falling, then obviously there's a lot of selling pressure on Bitcoin. All eyes are on Bitcoin. Bitcoin is dominating. Bitcoin dominance will go up. Alts will suffer quite heavily if that does happen. Now, I said this a while ago. My target for Bitcoin dominance before I think we see a substantial pullback on it is going to be around this region. It's already reached it, but I don't think it's going to stop. This obviously was some level of resistance here because we had previous resistance at around 64.7%. We did break through that a little bit though. We did break through that. So, you know, personally, what I do see happening as a worst case scenario for dragging out this entire alt season is that Bitcoin dominance does kind of just keep grinding till it gets to around 73%. So it'll grind until it reaches 73%. It'll reach these previous highs up here, and then we may see then a possible pullback. And if we break this trend line, that would be super, 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 super bullish, right? That's pretty much what we're looking for. We're basically looking for this trend line to break. And then obviously dominance shifts to altcoins. Everyone's going to be wanna be in altcoins, and hopefully that will drive price up. So I've spoken about Bitcoin. I've spoken about where I think it will go in the next couple of days. Um, Obviously, Ethereum's kind of just chilling at the moment. It got rejected a few times from that 50% fib level. It may try and retest it again, although I'm not optimistic. And, you know, I think we just need to keep an eye on Bitcoin at the moment. Now, we can have a look at a couple of different alts really quickly. I know I feel like I'm speeding through this. I'm definitely not going to be talking for another half an hour because there hasn't been enough that's happened in the past week to talk about, to be honest. There hasn't been anything substantially exciting. Um, I had this trade that I'd kind of mapped out as a potential trade. I didn't take it obviously because again it was just a potential, and we just basically have fib levels that we were watching here. But yeah, H bar. So H bar, in my opinion, has been like really, really strong. I think it's been pretty strong for a while, to be honest. I think when we basically had this massive God candle in November, like that pretty much summed H bar up, and in terms of how valuable Hedera is basically worth, right? So I think H bar is definitely one to watch out for. Um, Obviously, what scares me a little bit is we've got all of this liquidity down here that we haven't snapped up. So I don't see it happening now. You know, that would be like a complete worst case scenario to see something like this happen. Um, you know, you could obviously look at it and be like, oh yeah, but you know, like technically this could just be like a three-wave move down, right? If we take a fib level from here to here, get it pretty accurate, and we look at where it basically rejected from, on the higher time frame, this is weekly by the way, just as an FYI, on this weekly time frame, we have basically rejected from the 38.2% fib level, right? Which is the first major Fibonacci resistance area in this case. So, you know, yeah, I mean, it definitely would have been, a nice short to go from there. I I do think that we need to turn around worst case scenario, and I'm gonna just add the 786. Worst case scenario, we get to maybe 14.7 cents. I don't want to see H bar drop below this level though, because if we drop below this level and sustain below this level, this is basically going to be too deep of a pullback for it to be reliable that we will continue to the upside. Okay. Um, Now, obviously, worst case scenario, this is going to be basically a structure where we are retesting that 382 and then rejecting and continuing downwards. That would be like complete worst case scenario. And yeah, sure, you can look at this and you can say, okay, well, I mean, we can take this length here, right? And if we basically, you know, went to the top of the 382, where is that taking us down to potentially? That is taking us down to basically the area that we were eyeing up of where we think there could be a major reversal. But again, I don't see it happening just yet. I don't want to be that bearish just yet. Would I love a 7-8 cent H bar? Yeah, like obviously, that would be awesome because we haven't seen those levels for quite a number of weeks now. You know, it's been like 6 months since we've seen those levels. So, you know, we need to basically just keep an eye on this. This is obviously again on the weekly time frame. This is kind of more just a projection at the moment. This is nothing hugely accurate. But yeah, H bar is definitely looking strong. Um, you know, I mean, if we compare it with maybe some previous behavior on the lower time frame, so you know, we can maybe take a look at let's have a look at that previous time. So around here, basically between December and April of 2023. So you can see that we basically had a very similar looking trend line than we had here, and more so a very similar looking trend line that we have at current price action, right? So what could happen is we do something similar to this, which would be quite nice. Obviously, again, though, the pullback would be quite deep. It's not a complete invalidation. Complete invalidation would obviously be breaking below the previous low completely, right? So if we broke in this scenario, just obviously giving you guys an example, if we broke below 0.0399 or 0.04 and sustain below it, that would be a warning sign. That would be a warning sign that we're not going to hold this previous low and we're just going to continue to go down. Now, if we take a fib from this low here to this high, you can see that we basically got to that 786 fib level. We had a few moments where we were obviously trading below it. I don't even think we got to like the worst case scenario because this is like worst case scenario. Yeah, we didn't even get there. So, you know, we hovered around the 786 area, you know, and then made a recovery, got rejected at the golden pocket 618, back down again. Didn't basically break this level and then obviously continued to go higher. As long as we are basically holding that level, and if we look at it on the weekly, so let's have a look at this on the weekly as well, because weekly is going to basically be the most important when it comes to this. So let's make sure this is relatively accurate. Yeah. So I mean, look, don't get me wrong, we did obviously have a candle close below, but then we recovered. Okay. You can see previously we didn't have candle closes below. We kind of just had candle closes on that 786 level here as well. So I was just trying to silent yawn. Yeah, so we obviously did close below it a little bit, but then we recovered almost immediately that week. Um, and what would obviously concern me, as I said previously, is if we started closing below certain levels, like for instance, closing below previous lows, okay? That's where you kind of have to be careful a little bit, because if you start closing below previous weekly lows, like for instance in this example here, so what we had this crazy wick on that week in April, but guess what? It was a swing failure pattern, right? So when we meant to make this high, we didn't close above the previous candles. Remember, wicks don't count in this scenario, right? What counts is candle closures, and obviously in this scenario, we definitely didn't close above, 127, 0.127 cents. Like we didn't close above that, right? So yeah, that's the swing failure pattern. That is an indication that we will obviously go lower, and then obviously we broke below that previous low here. That obviously wasn't a good sign, but we obviously had a small pullback, but then obviously continued lower. So anyway, I digress. H bar has definitely seen similar behavior in multiple instances when broken out of a trend line. This instance, there was not really any retest when it broke out, which was a shame for people who missed the boat. But we'll have to obviously see what happens in this scenario, because H bar, from what I have seen, is obviously prone to really retesting the absolute last levels. So if we do see a retest of 0.147, I'm not going to be hugely surprised. Let's just see how Bitcoin's doing at the moment. Yep, that's fine. That's kind of as expected. We've got some level of support at around 104,000. So I don't expect Bitcoin to just drop like a stone. Let me go to, let's go and have a look at, just checking to see if anyone had any coins. By the way, if you do have any coins that you want me to look at, do give me a shout. I'm always happy to have a look at some coins. I will go through just a few. I'll go through like Doggy, I'll go through Solana. If I really bring myself to it, I might go through XRP. I probably won't, but let's go through Doggy first. So yeah, obviously with Doggy, we can see that we had this originally we had this falling wedge that we broke out of quite nicely. I did obviously confirm with you guys that I would say it's a 5-wave move up. I'll give the bulls the benefit of the doubt and obviously say that yes, they have achieved that to some degree. Now, obviously, we have a 3-wave pullback. This final wave is quite deep, but I do have a possible long for Doggy that I had put alerts on around the 0.184 to 0.171 region. So this was basically where you would like expect to have your retest. That might obviously mean that if Bitcoin drops a little bit lower, we may go a little bit lower. And then obviously we can have our entries in here with our stop loss here. And then obviously we can try and ride this out to the previous highs, right? I don't see, again, and this is the case with most altcoins, I don't really see us going back down to this level here. These previous lows that we made, I don't see us going down to that level, because I am giving a lot of charts benefit of the doubt and saying that we have got a 5-wave move up. Now with a 5-wave move, I would expect to see a 3-wave move down. Now this, you can say, obviously is a 3-wave move at the moment. Okay. If we take a fib retracement, we could possibly try and work out ideal targets for this, right? So I would like to possibly see this final wave go to between the 1.382 and the 1.618 fib level. If it goes low, that's a bonus. So I guess our entry is probably a little low. It's probably a little low, but it's probably like degen low. Yeah, I mean, we can probably like move it up slightly to where this previous high was down here. This is basically where you would have your order block, but yeah, I mean, this is a pretty nice trade, right? So, I'm definitely gonna take this trade, 100%. I'll update you guys a little bit closer to the time if price gets a little bit nearer. But my initial entry is definitely gonna be like a 30% at around this 0.184, and then obviously around this 0.174 area, I'm gonna take my final DCA, and we've got maybe a 4-hour close below that previous swing low, and this is obviously on a daily time frame, right? So targets for doggy are going to be, if we take a fib from, and if I actually make this look better, so if we take a fib from here to the high that we got, and we assume that we're going to kind of come around somewhere around here, right? It's going to be somewhere around here. Then I would possibly say, okay, maybe, let's say maybe around here, maybe where this order block is just below it. Yeah, then, 100% fib level is at around 30 cents. So 30 cents is basically going to be the first target for Ducky once we get into this long here, right? So, I mean, that's a pretty good RR, especially if we do on leverage, right? That's gonna be like a 70% move. So I'm definitely happy with something like that. So let's keep an eye out on Doggy, because Doggy looks like a good coin to trade once we get down to those levels. Same thing with H bar. I basically said exactly the same thing with H bar. And for the sake of it, I may actually just have a look at XRP, even though I'm not a massive fan of XRP, but we can look at what's going on with XRP. Let's have a look. Yeah, so it's a bit of a squeeze at the moment with XRP, I would say. I would say we're kind of squeezing a little bit. So we had this trend line here. If I just adjust it a little bit. Yeah, we had this trend line here. And we had this trend line here. We obviously deviated below it, but then stayed above it. And then obviously this trend line here, we deviated above it and stayed below it. So we're kind of squeezing a lot down here. Now XRP is obviously set to blow at this point. Now whether it's going to be in an upward direction or a downward direction is going to be very hard to tell. But there's going to be a few elements that you can obviously tell which direction it's going to go in. So this previous high here, even better would be this previous high. Would be even better, to be honest. So if we break above $2.47, there is a good chance that we can continue upside continuation. Okay. Better is to break above the $2.65 area. Okay. And then obviously we can see how high we can go of XRP, possibly try and test previous highs at $3.3. If, on the other hand, we start losing previous lows, like for instance this previous low here at around 2.077, so if we start losing 2.07, or even worst case scenario 2.03, or let's just call it $2, then there is a chance that we can obviously retest this $1.82 region, which is the 50% fib retracement on the higher time frame. Okay. So if I just show that to you guys, you can see this is basically on the higher time frame. It's quite a high level fib, okay? It's quite a high level fib. Ultimately, at some point, I would obviously like to see XRP test this $0.1 level. I don't think it's gonna happen anytime soon. I don't think it's gonna happen anytime soon. I do think like we continue to go higher after having a small pullback, not a considerable pullback. But again, though, as I said, I wouldn't really want to see XRP go below this $1.82 region. Yeah, I think worst case scenario, maybe we would get something like this, where we fall out and but then obviously recover and possibly continue higher, maybe even to $5. So yeah, 100%. We've got some really juicy looking alts at the moment. But I would desperately like to see them go ever so slightly lower. Sui, for instance, is another one, right? So Sui, um, honestly, like I'm like the dumbest person on the planet to not take my short because that was a really good short, and I'm obviously really dumb. I don't know why I cancelled it because it was super on point. It was like initial entry at $4, DCA around 4.28, literally perfect. But whatever, it is what it is. Um, anyway, so Sui's obviously broken out of this trend line. So we had this trend line that was obviously supporting Sui, and we basically are broken out of that trend line. Again, I wouldn't be surprised to see some little retest possibly before we then continue lower. And I will definitely be looking to buy a $3 to $2.7 Sui. Okay, so I do think if we hold this region, it's going to be a really, really nice trade upwards, maybe to like 5, 6, maybe even $7 plus. Okay. Um, and just to give you guys an idea, this is pretty much this is pretty much like the trade that I'm looking at the moment. And we could be, as I said, I said this last time, we could be really greedy about this. So we can trade this all the way up to like the previous highs of $5. And I would trade it up to all the way there with some patience, right? We get an entry here, like why are we not gonna hold it all the way up to $5? I mean, that's almost a 2x. Um, unleveraged, so these are the kind of trades I like to look for. I don't want to scalp for 30 seconds, and I haven't got time in my life to do that, unfortunately, but this is definitely one of the best looking charts at the moment. So definitely keep an eye out for Sui. Very surprised I hadn't put an alert on there, just to add to my stupidity. So yeah, I've got an alert on there. So I might also put an alert if we fall below that previous swing low as well, because that could be where we start having a look and possibly preparing to take a long at some point. Um, yeah, any requests, you guys, as I said, just give me a shout. But I think I'm gonna probably call it a day here. Um, Yeah, I mean, there's not too much. Again, there's not much to talk about too much. I mean, we already know what Bitcoin is doing. Bitcoin has obviously broken below that previous low. So we have to just see what happens at this point. If we candle close below that previous low here, then obviously there's a chance that we can go lower. We can possibly see 102,000, maybe even retest that 107,750 region. So yeah, definitely keep an eye out. Um, on my short from Bitcoin, I'll probably be taking some profits if we get down to this $100,750 region. And then obviously we can take a good chunk if we start dropping into this B wave pullback area that I am eyeing up at the moment. So yeah, not much else to talk about. I hope that's all clear for you guys. Remember, just always stay safe when you're trading. Don't over leverage, don't over position, overexpose yourself with your position size, and try to keep your emotions in check because they are going to be the most important thing when you are trading. So that is everything I've got to say for today. I hope everyone enjoyed the stream, and I will hopefully see you guys next week. Peace out.